Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to be starting shortly. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Remote Work Wednesday. On behalf of the Remote Online Initiative and the K-State Research and Extension Community Vitality Team, we're delighted to have you here on Remote Work Wednesday. I'm Ron Wilson, Director of the Huck Boyd Institute for Rural Development here at Kansas State University. Big thanks to Deb Oldie of the North Central Regional Planning Commission and to Deborah Cole, who is Program Leader Coordinator for K-State Research and Extension Community Vitality. Remote Work Wednesday is a project of the Remote Online Initiative, and I'm going to refer you to the website www.kansasremotework.com. So that's a site that will tell you about this initiative. We are offering month-long online classes which enable participants to become trained and certified as remote work professionals or as remote work team leaders. And so that opportunity is there online. And then to support that, we've initiated Remote Work Wednesday. It's a Zoom call on the first Wednesday of each month for anyone interested in remote work. The ultimate goal is to learn about the opportunities and challenges of remote work or hybrid work for those who choose to use it. This project is supported by a Network Community Solutions grant from the Network Partnership for Community Investment. The grant went to our partner, the North Central Regional Planning Commission here in Kansas. The grant provided ROI class scholarships to targeted counties which do not otherwise have scholarship support. Remote Work Wednesday is open to anyone with an interest in remote work and hybrid work. And so we're delighted to have you with us. The ultimate goal of this initiative is to help people's careers. And so our speaker for today is a perfect fit with that objective. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Deborah Cole, the K-State Research and Extension Community Vitality Program Leader Coordinator, to introduce our presenter.
Thank you, Ron, and it is my pleasure to introduce Christa Cooper. She began Career Evolution with a singular purpose: to wreak havoc on conventional junk career advice and empower and educate professionals to be powerful in having the say in their lives and careers. With 20 years of award-winning leadership, sales, and operations accomplishments, Christa is known as an industry trailblazer, focusing on the right practices, the right people, and the right solutions for any client. Her track record includes consulting with over 2,000 individuals on their personal brand and career strategies. And her professional and proven coaching process boosts clarity, confidence, and offers competition-crushing job search strategies for her clients. I personally value Christa's honesty, candor, and courage, all of which are contagious. Christa, what do we need to know about building our personal brands and networking in the new year?
Thank you so much, Deborah and Ron. I appreciate the invitation to share with everyone today. I don't think anyone can deny that the rise of the conversation and the in practice career path of the remote worker is something that I don't think business in the United States certainly could have imagined 3.5 years ago. Even the most recent data that I've seen within the last week is starting to recognize that this is here to stay, that there is a huge shift and an exponential increase in the number of positions that are moving to full-time remote or hybrid status compared to 3.5 years ago. And that brings with it a conversation that is ever more important for us as employees in the workforce today. What it looks like to foster your influence, build your network, build community around you, have people become your brand ambassadors out in the world when you aren't in the office at the water cooler with them nearly as often, becomes increasingly more important. You know, the messages that I talk about today, frankly, aren't that different than what I've been talking about in my business for the last 10 years. Networking has always been the path for the high 5-figure, 6-figure, 7-figure earner to their next sphere of influence, to uncovering opportunities in the hidden job market. But now the actual conditions of how we work is making this reality of networking even more critical, that we really begin to explore, how do we know what effective networking looks like, what great messaging looks like about ourselves, especially when, if I were to ask how many people, if the spectrum of the thought about networking is from nausea to excitement, I'm confident that the majority of people fall in the midpoint to nausea side. Most of us don't love the idea that networking is necessary. And we don't love that idea because it has anything to do with networking. We don't love that idea because what we think we know about networking. So when it comes to our careers, because this is a conversation for us as employees, this remote work conversation is for us as employees, not necessarily as business owners, but what does it look like for you sitting in your seat, managing your career? And most people have what I call a misguided interpretation that we actually didn't even choose. It was given to us. It was given to us by the things we've heard over time from people. It's just the conversation, the online chatter about what networking is as regarding our careers. So you might think, or have heard, or even have said that networking is, I'm going to call my friend Ron and say, Ron, how are you? It's great to talk to you again. By the way, I'm looking for a new job. Do you know anybody who wants to hire me today? Now, I say that with a lot of lightheartedness because I want to bring a lot of innocence to this path or this mechanism that you may have used in the past. If you personally haven't sent out an email to your LinkedIn connection saying, I'm looking for a job, who do you know that's hiring? Who could you introduce me to? And when you say that, who can you introduce me to? You actually mean, who can you introduce me to that's hiring? If you haven't said that, you almost certainly have received that from someone. Someone you used to work with or for has contacted you and said, you know, I made that switch to working for K-State. You know, it's just not quite what I thought it was. You know, keeping my ears open for what's out there. And then because your friends love you, they say, how can I help you with that? And you say, well, if you could introduce me to anyone that's hiring, if you hear of anything, and by anything, you mean an open posted position. And these are the waters we have swum in for most of our careers. If we're above 40. If we're above 40. You know who doesn't do that? Oh, that generation we like to talk about, right? That generation that we like to say are job hoppers and they have no loyalty. Friends, I want to introduce you to a paradigm changing thought that they have an immense amount of loyalty to being the CEO of their own career. They are the main characters of their own career journey. And we have something to learn from that mindset. We have something to learn from that mindset. That there is no shame, that in fact, it's my obligation and responsibility to be the main character of my own career story, not my employer, friends, not even my own business. I am the main character of my story. And when I stand in that and look at the world, then I start thinking maybe a little bit differently about networking. I start thinking about it more naturally as a conversation where, just like if my friends call after Christmas or New Year's and say, what are you up to? How'd you spend the holidays? That natural conversation where I'm just being myself, talking about my life, each of you would be talking about yourself, talking about your life, which includes your career. Networking is a natural conversation that's really about sharing what you're up to in your career. Now, that's very like esoteric. How do we get on the court with what that might sound like for each one of you? So I want to walk us through a framework, because before we can talk about how do I network more effectively remotely, I actually want to start with a core issue, which is, do I even know what my unique value proposition is? Do I even know what to say about myself? Tips, tricks, and hacks about how to be a more effective networker make no difference if I'm not clear what to say about myself. If I'm not standing in my power, in my main character energy of myself as a valuable asset in the workforce. Because when we talk about career, we are talking about a buying and selling market. You want to sell your services to some employer for some amount of money. That's a buying and selling exchange. So I want to come at this from a sales and marketing perspective and ask us to just move over to the side that old paradigm that networking for job search or networking for career advancement is telling people I want a job. Here's what I can promise. In 10 years, I've never shown up on a sales call and said, I'd like a new customer today. Are you going to be it? Want to buy? Don't job search that way. That's not how salespeople sell. So I want to bring a really just lovely, easy look at what it means to get more inside your main character energy in your life, in your career. Because really, the world is your oyster. There is no shortage of jobs. We are not in a bad job market. We are in an active hiring market in the most exciting time of every calendar year, which are the first 6 months of the year when the majority of hiring happens. So fostering relationships right now, it's a great time to be doing it. So I'm going to turn on screen share and walk us through a framework of looking at messaging about ourselves and the way we tell our stories. And we're going to talk a little bit about some different aspects of why this is so important. So before we do that, let me just get some facts up on the table. If you are a high 5-figure candidate, a 6-figure candidate, a 7-figure candidate, I want you to know that the majority of those job offers go to a candidate that's inside what we call the hidden job market. That's the jobs that aren't posted online. So now we see our first major hurdle. If I'm always asking Deborah, who do you know that's hiring? Who do you know that's hiring? Who do you know that's hiring? And the majority of offers for my type of work go to candidates in a hidden job market, meaning jobs that aren't posted, she can't help me. I'm literally asking her to speak Greek to me when she doesn't speak Greek. It's not that she doesn't want to help me. And it's not that there aren't opportunities. It's that I'm looking in the wrong place. I'm looking in the wrong place. So the hidden job market's very, very important for us to understand. Data shows that companies hire referred candidates 7 to 9 times more often than a job board candidate. So sometimes I'll have people tell me, I'm getting lots of interviews, but I'm not getting an offer. So my problem must be how I'm interviewing. Maybe. The first thing I would ask is, Deb, if you're having lots of interviews and not getting to an offer, where are those interviews coming from? Because if you're sourcing interviews from jobs you apply for online, and 90% of the time they're not going to hire one of those candidates, then those number of interviews are largely irrelevant to measuring your effectiveness in the market. It might not be an interview problem at all. How you interview might be fantastic. You're interviewing for the wrong kinds of jobs because they aren't jobs in the hidden job market. So understanding where we're sourcing opportunity is absolutely the first thing I look at with a client before I jump to, there must be something to be improved in your interview skills, because that may not be it at all. So how do you get yourself referred? Networking. It's all full circle. It's all full circle. So the data of the market can really show us why this is so important. So let's talk a little bit about how we begin to define what the heck is my unique value proposition. So I'm going to turn on screen share and we're going to walk through a framework that I use with clients to help us examine this. So first of all, just by, actually, let me stop share real quick and put everyone on gallery so I can see everyone's smiling faces. Okay, or actually, since a lot of you have your cameras off, maybe just do a thumbs up so I can see how many of you understand the term unique, or how many don't know what unique value proposition means? Let's do it that way. Can you raise your hand on your reactions and let me know if you don't know what unique value proposition means? Okay. Okay, so we have a few. All right, so this is a meaningful conversation then. Let's talk about that. So unique value proposition means if there's 500 Rons or 50 or 5, whatever level you think you're going to compete against. If there are 50 Rons applying for a job, a program director job, statewide program director for some nonprofit organization, what makes Ron more exciting, more trustworthy, and more unique than the 49 other Rons? And if Ron doesn't know or have a message that he can speak with confidence and ease about where his power comes from in the market, what makes him unique, what makes him trustworthy, then somebody else is going to get the job. Because he's not going to sound any more different. He's not going to sound any more interesting. It'll be slot one in, slot one out. And friends, you are not a cog in a machine to be slotted in and out. You're not replaceable by just let go of Sinead, hire Margie. That's not how it works. All of us have a unique value proposition. So we're going to distinguish what that looks like by looking at this framework to help us identify where do we even begin to go to try and figure this out. So I want to start with this Venn diagram. At the heart of this is your unique value proposition. Inside this Venn diagram is everything we could document about your career, all the facts of your career, what you've done, where you've been, how you've showed up, all your accomplishments. Also inside this Venn diagram is everything about your target audience, what they yearn for, how they hire, what their biggest business pains are. Because when it comes to our career, going back to careers are a buying and selling relationship. Employees are selling a service to an employer for a fee. That employer is buying a skill set from you. So our unique value proposition is a combination of who I am and what I offer to my employer and what my employers need. Okay. So if we took the time, you can actually document all of that. And at the heart of that is your unique value proposition. So here's a framework about how you can begin to explore this for yourself. First, I want you to consider and look at the patterns of what you're great at, who you're great with, where you're great. We're not looking at what did you do, because any job skills, I'm going to go back to Ron's example. If Ron is a statewide director of, or an executive director of a nonprofit, executive directors of nonprofits, by and large, are going to have similar sets of job duties. Not all the same, but very similar, the bulk and majority of those responsibilities. So guess what every single one of Ron's competitors has? Experience doing those same things. So when I say, what are you good at or great at, I am talking about the what, but I'm also thinking about who are you great with? So what kinds of teams have you worked the best with? What ones weren't so great? Because we wouldn't want more of those. Who are the leaders you work the best? Who are the customers you most enjoy working with? I've worked with thousands of people in the last 10 years in my self-employment journey since I left my corporate career. Tens of thousands probably before that. I didn't love all of those. You did not love every customer you've ever worked with, every boss you've ever had, every coworker you've ever had. We don't want more of that. So I want you to think about this like your professional dating profile. Your dating profile is more than single 47-year-old, one dog, owns a business looking for a partner. That's not a dating profile, friends. So I want you to think about all of the things that you are great at, who you're great with, how you're great. And what you're looking for here is evidence. We're going to get to that here in a little bit. Evidence of what you're great at. Before we worry about evidence, I want you to start even identifying who, what, where, when, how are you great. That comes first. And then we're synthesizing this with what you're passionate about. Because if you're like me, friends, there are parts of your job that are not your most favorite parts. And there are parts that you love. Like if you could design your job, you just do this one thing. You might have heard people talk about your zone of genius. I mean, I'm willing to be proven wrong, but I've never met someone that every moment of everything they do professionally is in their zone of genius. We all have things that we are good at. We can get paid to do. We can go get another job doing that thing, and it's not the thing that enlivens us. Friends, this is your one shot. This is your life. It's your one shot. How do you want to spend it? I sure don't want to spend mine doing a whole bunch of things I'm good at but don't love. That does not sound like a good use of my life energy. I really invite you to get inside, getting excited about driving your life in a way that excites you, that livens you up. And that's what you're passionate about. And notice there is overlap, and these are not the same thing. These are not the same thing. Now, this is all about you. This is all about you so far. But what's a good dating profile also need to encompass? Drawing the right audience. True story. In my 30s, there was a season where I perpetually would have people swipe right on me on dating apps. This was actually before swiping. They would message me. They would like me on the dating apps. I am, a Cosmo drinking, let's have a glass of wine kind of chick. And I would get dating profiles of people liking me that, no offense, but this just wasn't my thing. The dead animal hanging from the tree and the proud hunter next to it. Like, that would be the main image on their dating profile. And my dating profile literally said, like, let's go to the ballet and have a glass of wine. And I thought, what looks like this is a match? This is what happens. This is what happens with your resume. This is what happens with your LinkedIn profile. This is what happens with how you talk about yourself. We want to incorporate something about the audience you want to attract, not just you. So far, this framework is all about you. This is where the magic happens, when we start to incorporate our audience. What is it that you bring to the table your market values so much, they covet it so much, they would pay someone if they could get it? Now, I'm going to say something that may surprise you or possibly challenge some of your thinking. I want you to really invite curiosity here. Okay, Deborah is a program facilitator. I know her background well. She has developed amazing curriculums. She is an incredible operational leader. She is an incredible communicator. She's done all kinds of amazing things for K-State in her various roles over the years. I'm going to say something that might sound startling. No one at K-State ever said, I lust after great curriculum. How can I go spend money on it? Said no one ever in any meeting. What they want, student enrollment. What they want is people to buy their products and services. What we want are customers. Everything on the back end is something we have to pay for or have in order to get more of that. What your market values is not 20-year seasoned vice president of marketing. If they could get their business outcomes without paying for a VP of marketing, they absolutely would. And that doesn't mean anything about you. That's just business. When I used to sell consulting services, and at one time in my career, I predominantly worked with manufacturers in the state of Kansas. I worked for a public and privately funded company that specialized in working under a federal government program matched by private funds, selling consulting services, specializing in Six Sigma and lean manufacturing. I'd go to manufacturers, and the pitch isn't, can we bring in a whole bunch of statistical analysis to find out why you're not making as much money as you'd like to make? Because no one ever said, I'd love to spend money on that. Please, here's $500,000 for consulting this year. That isn't what happens. What does my market covet? Well, what they might covet is more access to their customer market, more access to international trade, more profitability, less turnover, more margin. So I had to become an expert at trafficking in that language and discussing those business problems, even though the solution I wanted to sell them was, here's my amazing portfolio of engineers who can come do magical things for your manufacturing plant. So for you, what is it that your market values? I'm going to start with that for all of us, whether we're for profit or not for profit, public or private, it always starts with money in the world of business, because that is the exchange. That's the medium of exchange. I'm selling to someone. And so this unique value proposition is a message about you based upon your history, your patterns, what you're excellent at, what you're enlivened by, and how you bring that together to meet the needs of your market. And when we speak outside of our unique value proposition, we diminish our power. We diminish our power. This is a foundational root cause or root solution to something we're probably missing in our career if we yearn for more influence, opportunity, and introductions. Worked with someone to help them look businesses, their marketing team. Their marketing team. This is why businesses have marketing, to develop this. We as individuals, we're in a time and state in the way jobs and careers go in 2023, when the average tenure at a company is 4.2 years. You might want to know what your unique value proposition is if and when you want to generate opportunities in the market. So if your communication is just pinging all over this Venn diagram, like a pinball machine, pull back that lever, let it go, it hits the ball goes everywhere, lights are dinging, points are going up on the board, on the pinball machine, and we think we're doing something cool. And until the game ends and I've scored 32,323 points and the high score was 180,000 and I go, whoa, I suck. There's no rhyme or reason in pinball for the average person, just like there's no rhyme or reason for the average professional and how they talk about themselves. Because most likely how you talk about yourself is you define yourself by your chronology. I was a VP of marketing at Sprint, and then I went on to become a CMO at blah, blah, blah company, as though that tells me something about your performance. And here's why I'm going to share with you that your chronology does not speak to performance. In every organization, in every industry, in every organizational type across the world, there are high performers, a whole bunch of mediocre performers or average performers, and below market performers. And you can have any title in the world, including CEO, and be an average or subpar performer. And buyers are savvy. Buyers are savvy, and a hiring manager is a buyer. Just like when I go to the Kia lot or the Mercedes lot or any car lot to look at a car, I'm a buyer. I'm going to give them money for something. A business is a buyer when it comes to who they hire, and they are savvy. And we know that job titles, however sexy they sound, oh, CMO of XYZ company, director of engineering, that doesn't tell me, are you better than the 500 other resumes that got submitted? Or the 5 other people that my trusted cohort referred to me? How do I know which Ron is the best Ron? So if you are communicating like a pinball, flying all over the place inside what's true about your career, but with no specific strategy or clarity, or even way to evaluate the strength of your competitive message, you might be creating your own pitfalls that are totally solvable. So what do these pitfalls sound like? You're getting phone calls from recruiters for jobs you would have done 10 years ago. That's a marketing symptom that the market hears what you're good at. There is something inside of that they're willing to pay for, but your brand doesn't create the what's next version of you. So let's put this in business perspective. What version of the iPhone is Apple on right now? I think it's the 15. Drop it in the chat if I'm off, but I think it's the 15. You know what they're not marketing? When you go to the Apple website and you click on iPhones, you know what doesn't come up on the front page? The model they were selling 2 years ago or last year. They lead with the what's next. But I bet most of you lead with where you are right now, the job title you have today, the thing you're offering today, where you might want to offer the Deb version 3.0, because that's what's next, right? So when you are in an organization where you've been doing the same work for so long, you're no longer challenged. That's a symptom. You're not leaning into your what's next and what would actually enliven you. Bad trade, one life, this is it. I'm not going to spend 5 years doing that. I sure don't want you to. Okay. And there are plenty of people that do, but you don't have to. You have agency in this. You do. So we can solve for this. Another major pitfall, compensation. Compensation. So this sounds like you interview, you talk to companies, you know what you're great at, you're speaking into jobs that you would love to have, and you know you can solve their problems, and they go, here's the offer, and it's 40% below market. It's under what you're currently making, wildly. I don't mean a little bit, I mean a lot. If you're continually dealing with being undercompensated against your peer group in the market, which, by the way, that can all be validated. You can talk to someone like me who knows how to help you validate that, or you can source information around that. But if your skill set is not being compensated at your own company or the market properly, that is a marketing or messaging issue that you might be totally talking about what you're great at and passionate about, and you are not speaking your market's language. You are not talking in the terms and the storytelling and the frameworks that will resonate with them. So what does this sound like? This sounds like networking, not related to compensation. This sounds like networking and saying, do you know who's hiring? I'm asking the wrong question. So my networking might suffer, might be difficult. In sales, it would be like when I sold to manufacturers, right? And I sold innovation and engineering and lean and Six Sigma and all that good stuff that would help manufacturers. That might sound like I go to a plant manager and say, what would it be worth to you to improve your quality performance this year? Now, is that a business problem they have? Yes. Is that the conversation they want to have? No. They want to have the conversation about how to make more money, get more market penetration, steal market share from their competitor. That's the conversation I have to traffic in. And oh, by the way I'm going to help you get that is I'm going to improve this quality over here. That comes after I'm engaging them in the conversation they want to be in. Same thing with hiring. And this isn't natural or intuitive for most of us. This is a learned behavior because mostly what we've been trained to do by job descriptions, by HR, processes of hiring, by how most companies hire, we have been trained to traffic in the wrong conversation. We have been trained to traffic in, here's my skills, here was my job duties, here were my job titles. And I am telling you that is the problem. Point blank, period, bar none, that's an ineffective selling conversation. Okay, compensation is related to market value. So let's look at some real life examples of this to really, really bring this home. For the ladies, I'll give 2 examples. For our friends who like purses, I can go to Target and buy a $35 purse. I can go to the Coach store and buy a $380 purse. Which purse will carry my lipstick better? It's the same function. So why is one 35 and one is 380? What does their audience value? What are they willing to pay for? Well, Christa, that's products. What is that? That's not how compensation works. HR has pay bands. Okay, well, if salespeople believe that, there would be no such thing as ever being able to drive sales growth. No plant manager ever invited me into their office and said, I'd love to give you $100,000. I've had the check waiting for you. Thank God you showed up today. I had to help them see why creating the budget for the solution to what they wanted was of critical importance, so they would find the money to pay for the services that I could offer them. That is your job. You are the seller of your services to your employer. You need to help them see the value you bring to the table so that they can go find the money. And this works. How do I know this? Because my clients average 20 to 40% more money if I coach them through job offer negotiations than their initial job offers, than their initial job offer. That's huge. That's not just more money than the last offer. By the way, the average increase when people change jobs DIY is about 14%. That's their total increase. I'm just speaking to an increase from whatever offer first came on the table to what we can get that up with a counter offer. That is extraordinary performance, because I'm not coaching from HR has a pay band, the pay bands are this. I'm coaching from a sales perspective. Did you create enough value with your audience that they'll go find an extra $40,000? Is it possible every time? No. Is it possible most of the time? Absolutely. There's a shockingly low percentage of people that even bother with a counteroffer in the job market. The vast majority of employers are not experts at negotiating job offers because there's no negotiating happening. They asked you early in the process what you were hoping to make. You gave them a number. They anchored to that. And then they said, okay, Deborah, here's the offer. Most employers are actually quite surprised when you even counteroffer, because that's how few job seekers work to offer a counteroffer that's a win-win to an employer to increase their income. Critically important. Compensation is an issue of messaging and how you interview. And then the other big pitfall that undistinguished communication can create lands in this one area: not qualified, not qualified. So we do this to ourselves, and the market does it to us. So a lot of us may have heard the data that came out of Harvard Business School, where they did research about how many pieces of the job description does a man need to feel he needs before he's willing to apply versus a woman. Shocking. If a man hit about 50 to 60% of the characteristics, they apply. Women feel like they have to hit 90% or they don't apply. That's us doing it to ourselves. I look at it, I measure myself against it, I say I'm not qualified, so I pull myself out. That's a mindset issue. What I want to speak to right now is how the market does this to us. What this sounds like in job search. Here's what this sounds like. You've interviewed, you've gotten to that final stage. The employer comes back and says, Ron, you were great. It was such a tough decision. We really appreciate all the time you spent with us. We did go in another direction, but you're marvelous. And if something else comes along, we'll keep you in mind. And they do mean that. I'm sure that they mostly do mean that. The reason Ron didn't get the offer is someone else was more persuasive that they were better at the work than he was. Now that's a hard ego hit to get. We all want to get asked on the next date, even if we didn't like the first date, because we want to be the ones that say no. So it's not a good ego feeling, but as your coach, I would say incredibly empowering. Because if the reason Ron didn't get the offer was his stories didn't offer the right or enough evidence that he was a great performer at the function required, that's a storytelling issue. And Ron can get better at storytelling. That's a coachable, trainable, learnable skill. Now, this is only true presuming you actually have the skills for the job. The job requires, programming, and I'm applying for it. I'm not going to get it because I don't know how to program. But if the issue was my stories weren't convincing enough, they weren't persuasive enough about what I do know how to do, that's on me to improve. So you can really see the danger zones that when I'm speaking outside of the limits of my unique value proposition, I'm just giving away my own power of persuasion, my own power to generate opportunities. I'm doing it to myself. That's the good news. Because if I can identify what's getting in the way, I can be at work on improving that. That's why I find this to be such an empowering framework. Every one of us can identify what are we great at? What are we excited by? What does our market need? And if you're not sure how to identify that on your own, you can go out and get resources to support you in that. And then build your career messaging around this. And then that messaging is what you build into everything. Your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your networking conversations. You know, when I see Deb at an industry conference a year after we've met, and she says, "What are you up to?" I'm going to share something that lives inside my unique value proposition. I'm going to be on brand to who I am and what I'm up to in the world. And this, friends, is not the same thing as marketing your employer. Networking for your employer is always talking about your employer. Your employer's brand is not your personal brand. Your next employer is not hiring your employer. They're hiring you. You have your own brand, your evidence of your performance, where you live. So how do we build this evidence I keep referencing? Let's look at that for a minute. I want to talk about the typical types of content that you're going to see on people's resumes, on your own resume, in LinkedIn profiles, and in your verbal storytelling. So most people's resumes and LinkedIn profiles are filled with duties, tasks, and responsibilities. Have you ever seen resumes that every bullet looks like it was just pulled from the job description for the job? Those are the job duties. That is the least powerful content you can share. That content, every single one of your competitors has the same or could have the same content. The VP of engineering has similar functions to the VP of engineering, who has similar functions to the VP of engineering. So if your resume is in a stack of 500, if you're networking and you're, one of 20 at a conference who are like you all have these. That's not distinguishing. Outcomes gets us closer to how do we evidence our performance, and outcome measures how well do you do the thing you do. So I'm old enough that I still remember when the crash test dummy commercials came out in the 80s and the cars started competing, the car manufacturers started competing about who had the safest cars. And the way they would visualize this for us while we were watching Dynasty on Tuesday night or Friday night, they would have these commercials of the cars crashing into the stone wall, the concrete wall, and the dummies inside the car, their limbs go flying out of the car because they want us imagining our loved ones or ourselves, being in that circumstance. And then they would say the Toyota Corolla, was the best in class safety rating among mid-sized sedans by the National Highway Institute. That was their evidence. So what was the thing that they offered? Safety. Well, they're competing against all the other cars that offer safety. Not very powerful. Where's the evidence the Toyota Corolla is better than the Beetle? The measurable evidence of how well it performs in a safety test. Here's the biggie. Why would I care about safety? Well, if I want a sports car, that might not be my concern. I'm not their target audience. But if I'm, a 30-year-old who in the United States might typically be married and have children, their target audience might be families bringing their newborns home from the hospital, grandma taking their grandchild to the, Sunday school. The impact is, why should I care about that best in class rating? So let's look at some examples of ordinary life, because I think that makes it easier to map it into ourselves and our business life. So if we were marketing a mop and the mop says, this mop has 500 strands of individually woven, quick absorbing fibers. That's what makes it unique. Well, it's only unique if there's no other mops on the market that have that, and if that means something about its performance. All kinds of hidden assumptions in here, and we think our market understands us when we talk about why I have this job duty and it's a better job duty. They don't understand it. The outcome, the mop, because it has those strands, helps me mop 50% faster than its competitors. Y'all, I don't like to mop, so that doesn't matter to me. But it's an outcome, Krista. It proves it mops faster. Well, that only matters if someone cares about mopping faster. So what's the impact? Mopping 50% faster means you, Deborah, get to spend more time doing the things you love and less time mopping, which you hate. That's what the commercial for that would look like. So what is this value schema? Duties, tasks, and responsibilities, largely irrelevant. Impacts, this is where your value lives. Can your storytelling showcase impacts evidenced by outcomes? We never even need to talk about duties, tasks, and responsibilities. Okay, so let's look at some conversation about things that you might talk about in your career. This is where what they're selling with this impact is somebody's freedom. I want to be in the backyard playing with the dogs, or I want to go to happy hour with my friends. I want to go to my kids' school play. If I have to spend my day mopping my house, I can't do that. What the mop is selling me is freedom, not 500 individually woven strands, not even 50% faster. 50% faster is just the evidence that I can believe them, that I'll get my freedom. So let's look at real content from a resume. This is not made up, straight from a client's real content. This was a bullet from a client I had a few years ago. This cracks me up. Utilizing commercially excellent skill set to define commercial processes and unlock revenue growth across the enterprise. I feel like that is exactly a job bullet that someone on Saturday Night Live would mock when making fun of a whole bunch of people sitting around a conference table speaking business jargon. So what did she actually deliver? What was a measure of performance that would tell me her skill set helped unlock revenue growth? Prove it to me. That's what an outcome is, answering. Prove it to me. She led a selling team to contribute $425 million in annual revenue. Well, Krista, holy cow, $425 million is a lot of revenue. Not if you're a $20 billion company, $50 billion company. Maybe if you're a $100 million company, it is. So what's the point? The evaluation of the outcome depends on the context of the listener, or the context you put it against. The outcome itself is not your point. Your point is that I grew a $150 million sales team by 200% to create $450 million and lead the largest division of $1 billion line of business. The measure was I did 425. She actually did 450. But what she did was she took a smaller performing team, grew it by 200%, and became nearly 50% of the entire division's $1 billion line of business. Now I have a scope of reference about what this person is capable of. Enormous revenue growth, accounting for 50% of a $1 billion division. That's very, very different, because if the goal had been 425 million and she hit her goal, that may not be evidence of performance. That's doing the job she was there to do. She was paid to create 425 million. That's not what she was paid to create. She was paid to run a $150 million sales team. What she did was wildly outperform that goal by 200%. That's achievement. That's a marketing message that an employer is going to sit up and take notice of. So here's another one. Exceeded 2022 sales growth. We've all seen this. The resumes that say award winner 3 times in a row, 6-time President's Club winner, 7 times Innovation Award winner. What if everybody got a participation trophy in that company? It's not an achievement without context. Okay. Received the Bronze Founders Award, contributing to $1 billion division. This is what she actually did to win the award. She turned a raw product surplus that was driving down margins into an award-winning sales plan that grew 60% of their top 10 customer accounts and generated $87 million. So she turned around a margin losing commodity issue that's outside of their scope of control. And she figured out a way to drive a sales plan that grew 6 out of their top 10 accounts. No business in the world would sneeze at that comment. They would go, oh, well, I want my top 6. I want 6 out of my top 10 revenue generating customers or revenue generating partnerships or strategic initiatives to be met. I lost margin in this area that I'd like to recapture. So I'd love for you to take this framework and just go through your own content. Look at your own LinkedIn profile and your own resume. Start with just identifying. Go through and mark every bullet. Is it a 1, a 2, or a 3? Is it a job duty? Is it an outcome? Or is it an impact? We've got to get in black and white reality before we start to make improvements. So see what you're starting with, and then start to ask yourself, for every job duty, where's the evidence I did it better than expected or better than a goal? Where's the measurable evidence that I did something effective? Because saying I know it works isn't credible marketing content that your audience is going to go, oh, okay. Because they're going to have 50 other people saying, just trust me, I did it, it worked, I'm good. Evidence, and then why it mattered, how it solved something that your market actually covets. No employer said, I really hope to get award-winning candidates. But they absolutely are sitting in executive leadership meetings saying, Deborah, this is unacceptable. This business line is losing 20% of its margin because of XYZ. Fix it. They absolutely are having that conversation at the conference table. So if we start with really identifying how do we improve our storytelling, we start with this framework. Can I just start with what I have, which is probably mostly job duties, tasks, and responsibilities? Can we put an outcome to it? And one of the things I often hear is people saying, I don't know how to do that. Someone outside of you can typically help with that if you're not sure how to do that yourself. But I really encourage you to just start, look for yourself. How would I measure that process improvement created an outcome? Well, we were more effective. More is a math word. How do you know you were more effective? We increased efficiency. How do you know that? Because we had touched less pieces of paper than we did before. Great. How many less? What's your best estimate of how many less pieces of paper you touched because you automated that? And then what did that enable? An outcome is always enabling some impact. Because we got more efficient, we handled more volume, and we didn't have to have a reduction in force. That's an impact. That's an impact. Okay, friends. So how do we tie this full circle to this world of networking? Let's go back to where we began, this spectrum of nausea to excitement about networking. Mostly the nausea comes from having this relationship like, it feels really skeezy to go to my community and say, I'm looking for a job. Can you help? I don't like asking for that. We think it's bragging. I don't want to be a bragger. And friends, a lot of people in the Midwest say that to me. I'm not a bragger. My parents taught me to be really humble, right? It's not bragging to speak truth about the outcomes and impacts you delivered. Those are facts. Those are facts. If you want to transform your relationship with networking, transform what you're talking about to be talking about facts, about your performance. Mostly bragging feels like when we just don't know what to say and we're saying a bunch of fluff. Yeah, that feels icky. I probably can't help you with that because I can't really coach you not to feel icky about fluff. I don't like fluff. But I can definitely help people, help myself get confident about owning the accomplishments I've delivered, because then I'm just sharing facts. Am I sharing them persuasively? Hopefully, yes. Do I want you sharing them persuasively? Yes, but they are facts. So doing this framework of what I did, how I measure it, and why it mattered. What did it enable? Gets you out of the world of feeling like networking is really uncomfortable. Now, is this all there is to it? No. This is what we can talk about in an hour. but it does give you a framework of actionable steps you can start taking today, looking at your own content, and give you a place to begin to gain insight into how you can create a more empowered relationship around identifying your own unique value proposition and owning your story. And that's really the goal. Networking begins with, am I empowered about it? Can I own my story? Do I even know what my story is? Everything else after that, there's a million places to learn tips and tricks about networking. But owning our story really is the core and foundation of your success. So I'm happy to share this slide set with the team. And they can share that with you if that's something that if you guys typically do that, or if any participants want to request that, I'm happy to share that. And I would love to answer any questions or take questions, answer any, really anything about the job market that you care to ask.
Are there questions? Not seeing questions in the chat. Can you
Christa?
say a word about the hidden job market, what that means and how one deals with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the higher up you go in your career in terms of tenure, seniority, accomplishment, compensation, the fewer jobs there are, right? It's like a pyramid. We get closer to the top, there's fewer available in the market. There are less CEOs than there are frontline workers. That's just math in the market. So as we grow in our career, we face steeper competition because you're a high performer, you're competing against other high performers for fewer jobs. So the competition and the need for us to own understanding how to compete becomes even more imperative to continuing our career trajectory. So one of the things that we know from the data in the market that companies report about who they hire is that even though they post jobs online on their careers page of their website, on places like LinkedIn or other job boards out in the market, they may interview through those vehicles, but they are typically going to hire those people that come through a trusted resource. And often jobs aren't posted online at all. So that looks like Ron knows he's going to retire. I'm making this up, by the way. Don't anybody panic. Ron knows he's going to retire, and the leadership says we ought to really start exploring who we're going to replace him with. It's 18 months out, but maybe we ought to think about succession planning. And the board of directors is out playing golf, and he says to his buddy, yeah, we're going to lose our executive director. And his buddy goes, I know who you should talk to. I just had lunch with this amazing person. You know, I'd really love to introduce you. That's the hidden job market. So that competitor gets into that organization having a conversation about a role that's not been posted online, may not ever be posted online. Also, Ron, another take on that hidden job market could be that that competitor gets in, talking about the job, building a relationship, fostering emotional currency. The organization, for HR purposes, goes ahead and posts the position, but they really know who they already want to hire. They've already made their decision. They're posting it to go through the protocol, but they know they're going to give it to that candidate that got referred to through the golfing buddy. They already like them. They've already talked to them. They've already been building a relationship for 3 months before they posted the position. Does that help?
Absolutely. Let me share this question from the chat.
Please.
Perhaps you can see it. From Heather Roberts. My response to that, I'm looking for a job comment when it's received from others, has always been to send them links from job boards. What's a better response to help develop my credit with that person paying it forward, as they say?
Absolutely. So this is great. So I had a conversation with a collaborator yesterday, a financial advisor who is going to offer a masterclass to my clients. And we're brainstorming ideas. We're riffing about kind of the value of what she has to share about money mindset and why it matters in our career. And at the end of the conversation, we've built a lot of emotional currency. I'm very excited. She's going to do this for my clients. We've had this great, exciting conversation. And I'm so in the world of my agenda. Even as somebody who's really trained in networking, I forget. Well, I think I did say, how can I support you? But I was really thinking like in light of the conversation we just had. And she says, well, what other kinds of businesses do you think I ought to collaborate with? And as soon as she asked that, I thought, oh, I know a business owner in a completely different industry who has very much the same philosophy that this person does about business and money, and they might be great collaboration partners. So I think, Heather, one of the ways to pay that forward is to take the conversation to a deeper level. If you haven't had a conversation like I had with this collaborator, where you've yet been able to ask this person who's asking you, do you know of anything? Start with asking them questions about, what are you passionate about? Like, what do you think makes you unique in the market? What do you want to do with your life? Don't ask the what job are you looking for question, because that puts us right back in that old paradigm. Right back in that old paradigm. Great networkers aren't people who know where all the jobs are. Great networkers are people who are listening for what's important to Deborah, what's interesting about who she is, what's her philosophy or approach or mindset that really jumps out in a conversation. And if I haven't had enough conversation with her yet to really get that about her, I'm probably not ready to make any kind of introduction or referral. I would just want to start with, let's have a conversation. Let me get to know you a little bit deeper, or ask these different questions maybe than what kind of job you're looking for, so I can think about who in my network could be a good connection for you. Not who do I know that's hiring, who in my network could be a good connection for Deborah based upon what I know about her. If we don't know very much about them, it's hard to make a meaningful connection. So I would suspect that most people in a networking conversation are listening from, who do I know that's hiring that I can introduce Shirley to? I'd love for each of us to start from, when we're on the listener side, how much do I understand what this person's just about, who they are being in the world, and who might be a match for that? And let them work out where they take the relationship, regardless of job. That's what makes you a powerful connector.
Thank you. And that's really consistent, I think, with Deb's point and Deb Oldie's point in the chat about the value of listening and really understanding the other perspective. I know we need to be sensitive to our time boundary here.
And I'm happy to continue to answer questions that if people have dropped them in the chat, I'm happy to stay on and get those answered in the recording.
What I would like is for, on your slides, I saw an email address, contact info. If there's an email or a website that could go in.
Absolutely.
I would appreciate that.
There's my website. You can find me there. And I can also drop in my LinkedIn profile. I love to connect on LinkedIn and have conversation about what you're up to, what's important to you, give you any feedback that you would be valuable to you. I'll drop that in as well. But those are both great places to find me.
Super. Okay, good. Glad to see that in the chat, and we will capture and share that. One really quick announcement: next month's Remote Work Wednesday is February 7, and it gets into some nuts and bolts, dollars and cents for remote workers, and that has to do with tax implications. So Professor Amy Hageman will be our speaker on February 7. Let's have a virtual round of applause for Christa Cooper, our terrific presenter today. Thank you, Christa, for your excellent comments. I appreciate
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Your perspective greatly. Thank you, Christa. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Remote Work Wednesday. We'll hope to see you next month. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.